Bielema announced early this morning that he will take over for Lovie Smith. Already started his duties. He will be at the game today at Penn State, but will not coach. Will sit with Josh Whitman as a guest of the Illinois athletic director. We've got a jam-packed show for you today. I hope you'll tune in and get some good perspective. We got an all-star crowd today. And maybe for the first time, we're going to welcome in the entire WCIA 3 sports team, plus Jeremy Werner from Illini Inquirer. He's been breaking this down all day. You can head there for all of your content leading up to Bret Bielema, as well as now moving forward. And that's the biggest thing everyone wants to talk about. So we've got Marley Weirder, we've got Andy Olson, we've got Jeremy Werner. We're going to have Robert Rosenthal, who is at State College. He's going to join us here in just a few minutes, just arriving. He left this morning to go to Penn State. He's going to make this great East Coast track to Rutgers and then back to Penn State for the basketball game. Oh, yeah, we've got basketball tomorrow as well in another top 25 matchup. And Robert just joining us now. We'll get him in just a couple of minutes here. But, Jeremy, I want to start with you and your initial takeaway from hearing Bret Bielema is the coach.
Well, Bret, as a media guy, I am pumped because we get the antithesis of Lovie Smith. And I think we get a guy who's going to be very entertaining at the podium. I think we're going to get a guy who's very intense and get a guy who's very excited to be here, and I think he's going to bring a lot of personality. Now, it can be a brash personality, and sometimes it can rub people the wrong way, but if you're winning, I think a lot of fans will love it. If you lose, maybe they don't love it so much, but it's another big splash hire. This is what Josh Whitman does. So while Lance Leipold from Buffalo, despite losing a game for the first time when Illinois fans are watching him, I think Lance Leipold made a lot of sense. I thought he was a conventional hire. I think Sean Lewis would have been an up-and-comer from Kent State, but that's not what Whitman does. And his three big hires here, and really you can even put the women's basketball program in there with hiring somebody like Nancy Fay, who's won so many Division III national titles. I think this was a huge splash hire. Unlike Lovie Smith, it's a guy who's proven at the college level, though, right? I mean, this is a guy who's won a lot of games at Wisconsin, was 68-24 there, was 37-19 in the Big Ten, 3 Big Ten titles. Now, of course, Ohio State and Penn State were down as they were going through scandals, but he's bringing identity. He's going to bring smash mouth football, which I think fits the offensive line, running back, tight ends room Illinois has right now, and he brings an aggressive defense that has worked at the Big Ten level. That said, after he left Wisconsin, which he replaced Barry Alvarez, so that was all set up for him, he struggled at Arkansas. That's a tougher job, I think, because SEC West, the best division college sports has ever seen. But he won. He went to 3 straight bowl games, had a year where he won 8 games that he could have won 10. And because of that, he was fired after a 4-8 season, 1-7 in the SEC after 2017. But I think he's a better fit in the Big Ten. He's from Illinois. He's obviously recruited Wisconsin a lot. He said the right things recruiting-wise, which I'm sure we'll get into. But he played at Iowa. He's from Prophetstown on the Iowa border. I just think he brings energy. He brings a known quantity to Illinois football. I don't know whether it'll work or not, but it certainly is a huge, big-name hire and one that certainly is going to bring energy to Illinois football, Bret.
Bret, if you're trying to talk to me, I can't hear you, but it looks like I'm on the screen. So
there we go, Robert. Okay, that was my fault. We got Robert Rosenthal now. I think you can hear me now. Live from State College. You just got into town, right? Just rolled up. I see snow on the ground. I see a stadium. How was the trip, and what's it like there now?
Well, is this too loud? They're playing their pregame hype music, so
nope, you're doing great
here. But yeah, the trip was great. Like all the streets in State College are like a lane and a half, like these 4-lane roads. They were able to kind of clear the right lane, but it's about half snow, half piled up. So it's got to be at least 15 inches of snow around here, at least. So it's crazy, but yeah, made it. Highways were great. Here I am.
All right, Robert, give us a sense of your first reaction from the Bret Bielema hire this morning.
You know, it's kind of crazy. I'm like driving, I'm like somewhere between Indianapolis and and the Ohio border, and I see Kent's email pop up on my phone. I mean, I recorded a podcast with some of our guys on Wednesday night, and we did this little thing at the end of like, you had $100 in Vegas and you were going to bet on an Illinois coach, not who you think it's going to be, but who you think's the best bet, the best odds out there these days. And I put my money on Bielema just because it kind of fit what kind of thing I was figuring Josh Whitman would be going for. I felt that it was a real serious thing, and a lot of fans had maybe dismissed it, thought, maybe not, maybe that's, Arkansas failed pretty badly, so he's probably not on the list. Maybe this is agent is promoting this, but, that was my value bet of like, I think he's more of a candidate than most think, and here we are. So I was a little surprised given that, it seemed everything was moving toward they were waiting for Lance Leipold to finish his game last night, and then maybe something happens today. But here we are, and it's time for the Bielema era.
All right, there's a lot of guys that are not going to play today. We're going to get to the game coming up in just a few minutes, but I think this coaching hire takes so much precedence for Illini Nation, just looking forward in a game today that honestly doesn't really matter that much. Jeremy, I want to go back to you real quick, and Robert, we'll come back to you in just a moment. But recruiting, obviously, a big part of this, and Josh Whitman had said that. Jeremy, how do you feel like that Bielema can come in and really put his mark on this state and on his recruiting and building a program?
Well, listen, I think he did the first thing that he needed to do, which was reach out to coaches. He's already said recruiting is a priority, which every coach does, okay? I don't want to say that Lovie Smith did that too. And in his first year, Lovie Smith signed 9 guys. And after that, he just kind of went a different way. I mean, the state can be over-recruited at times. Maybe some prospects are built up a little bit much. And it's hard for Illinois, a program that hasn't won a lot of games, to convince the top prospects in the state. But Lovie's outreach to the coaches was perceived as not enough, right? So even though they host the coaches clinic for years and Lovie Smith speaks there, they just didn't feel like he was going above and beyond to make sure that they felt wanted, that the in-state prospects felt wanted. Now, I know some of the Illini staff will say, hey, we have as many in-state players, is more Illinois players than anybody in the Big Ten, which they should, and walk-ons are a part of that. They have the 7th highest rate of percentage of players are from in-state than any other team in the Big Ten. So kind of in the midway point there. But you have to make a bigger effort. And Bret Bielema already has said every coach will have a recruiting territory in Illinois. And I can tell you that's not the case right now. He is going to go in these schools when he can and make his presence known. Now, you can't just rely on it. And Illinois is not going to own the state. They can get their fair share, though. Illinois has had none of the top 12 prospects in the last 4 years from the state of Illinois. They went 2019 famously with no in-state, or 2020, excuse me, with no in-state prospects signed in that class. That was an embarrassment. And this year they add a couple offensive linemen. We'll see how they work out. But you have to build a foundation. Even Ron Zook had a foundation of in-state kids that you were able to win with. You got to get your fair share here because they're most likely going to come to you. I mean, the kids who are closer to home are more likely to come play for you. You're going to have to win games to do that. You still got to recruit Florida, which Bielema has done. But he's taken the right steps, Brett, initially, which is reach out to these in-state coaches. He was on a phone call with the IHSFCA president today. That's a good first step.
And Robert, I wanted to ask you, because one of the things that Bielema said on game day today was switching from the 4-3 to the 3-4 defense. And we were kind of talking about it a little bit in the newsroom today. But how do you think that maybe just turns this Illinois defense, upside down, and what changes are going to happen moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, given the number of injured linebackers right now, and given, like who's even available today, some friends and I were on the phone while I was driving, joking, like, he's going to say that on game day and then go to this game today and be like, we're going to go back to the 4-3 because apparently there's 2 linebackers on this team. So, obviously that'll work its way out. Obviously, there's the transfer portal now. And if you want to switch defenses, it's a lot easier to do today than it was 5 years ago to just say, okay, I need this kind of 3-4 defensive end. hey, look, there's a guy at Texas who isn't getting snaps and wants out. And so, there's ways to go about it to change things that maybe weren't available before. We just saw it with Rutgers this season. Greg Schiano comes in and says, I want to do this and this. We don't have those guys. How about that guy from Wisconsin and that guy from UCLA? And that's how they kind of filled those gaps of players they didn't have. So it'll be interesting. It'll be funny just to see how he goes about evaluating the roster and then comes back out and says, maybe we're going to do this. I think there's some hang-ups that he's maybe not aware of yet, but we'll see how that goes.
And I think defense is, clearly going to be one of the focuses of people in the offseason, going from Lovie Ball and Bielema being a defensive coach himself. I mean, looked up how his defenses have done, in the past for Wisconsin and Arkansas, average yards allowed. I mean, at Wisconsin, he inherited a team that was 94th in the country for average yards allowed, turned that into the next year into the 5th best team in the country. Maydet was predominantly in the top 20 then with Wisconsin. After that, Arkansas got into the top 10 one of those years and then kind of fell off. So, Jeremy, I want to ask you, we talked about, the possibility of that shift to a 3-4 defense and where the team is right now. I mean, but how important is it for Bielema to, take ownership of that defense and kind of continue what Lovie Smith did in his tenure and keep that a strong point for Illinois?
Well, I think what is Robert's saying is true. I think the transfer portal is going to be very important on that side of the ball, especially the back seven, where they just didn't have enough scholarship players coming into the season. But I do think you're going to see Bielema, and he's talked about this before, there's going to be a transition where he's got to adapt to what his roster has. So can he do everything he wants right away? Probably not. I also think about the offensive side of the ball, and I'm sure Robert has thoughts on this too. But they got a bunch of dual threat quarterbacks, and Bielema has always had these pro style quarterbacks. Maybe they can run a little bit, but you think of Wisconsin, he's kind of had these pro style quarterbacks. But he mentioned today on both Game Day and BTN that he's probably evolved most on offense. So does that mean he's going to have more running quarterbacks? Is that why, Bill Belichick, who he's just coached under the last couple of years, went to Cam Newton this year because after all those years with Tom Brady, he thought, man, if I could have a running quarterback that can do some things, that's what I struggle with defensively as a defensive coach. So I think that's going to be really interesting is who does he hire as offensive coordinator? What do they try to do? How has he evolved as a coach? I think that's going to be really interesting, and to see who he keeps on staff. He said today a 10th assistant coach could help him keep a special teams coordinator. I think Bob Wojciechowski has been a pretty good one for Illinois. Does he keep Corey Patterson as a recruiter? Does he keep anybody else that he thinks can be a good position coach? But I do think he's going to be in this transition year. I think he's going to evolve to his team before he asks the team to evolve to him with who he can bring in as recruits.
And I'll ask both Jeremy and Robert this. Do you think he brings anybody back? Does that benefit him to bring back a Corey Patterson? How does he go about this? He said, I heard him say earlier, he hasn't made any calls on defensive or offensive coordinators yet. Jeremy, go first.
Yeah, I think if you want to recruit St. Louis, Corey Patterson's that guy. And I think most coaches look at, hey, what worked here? What can we bring back that actually works that I don't need to mess with, that this is a good thing? And he talked about today a 5-hour radius. We've heard this from Beckman. We've heard this from all of these different coaches of what you got to do to recruit. You'd be dumb not to recruit St. Louis. And Corey Patterson, I think, with a more active coach, head coach in recruiting, can do better in St. Louis than he has. And he's done pretty well. He's added some pretty good talent out of St. Louis. I think Wojciechowski makes a lot of sense. And then there's some guys that other people don't even know about, like Tim Knox, the director of football operations, who's so good at his job. Pat Embleton in the recruiting department, who just kind of knows what works, what doesn't for Illinois. I think all those guys can make some sense. But I just think he needs to bring in a couple strong offensive or a couple coordinators, bring in a good offensive line coach, and then get some guys who can really recruit in state.
Robert, what do you think about that?
The interesting thing about being on the road for the last 9.5 hours is I would normally dive into this. I would have spent 6 hours online researching this, who'd he coach with before. And really, it was like a stop at a truck stop to be like, tweet a few things and this and that, and then back to my podcast on the road. So I'm kind of flying totally blind without any information yet. I feel like, a friend sent me a text saying hey, he said he hasn't even thought about assistants yet, which was very interesting to me in that, the way I picture these things going down, that it becomes when they sat down for the interview, he pitched the idea of so-and-so coming with him as a recruiter / coordinator and all this. And it doesn't sound like this was that at all. It sounds like this was just him selling himself and his ability to win in the Big Ten. So given that he hasn't thought about it yet, that my guess with that is it's one of those, he keeps 2 guys for continuity, keeps 2 guys maybe close to some of the guys they'd be worried about transferring, and beyond those 2 guys, he gets his own 8 guys. That would just be a guess. Could be only one. Could just be one guy held around.
Robert, what do you think here in the next, say, 2 weeks to month that is really important before this next signing period that he has to go out and do, whether that's secure more high school kids, or do you feel like he'll go out and just get a bunch of transfers to fit his scheme?
I think the number one thing, without question, hands down by a factor of 10, is which seniors come back. If you had, who knows what the individual kids are going to want to do. Some are done with school and they want to try the NFL draft. Some would love to play football again. But with this many seniors, say he talks Jake Hansen and Milo Eifler into coming back. Well, then he doesn't have a linebacker problem anymore. He gets 2 starters back. This is the very unique, won't happen again in our lifetimes, ability to take seniors and say, hey, want one more year of college football? And so those conversations, those sit downs, we know Bebe is not playing today and he's gone. He's ready for the NFL draft. But for the rest of the seniors on that roster, does he sit down with Brandon Peters and say, hey, I need you. You're my kind of quarterback. Please come back for one more year. Take some more grad school classes. You have the ability to do this. It'll be fascinating what those meetings go like, because, no coach next year, no coach in 10 years will have the ability when they take over a program to sit down and say, hey, seniors, want to give it another shot? So we'll see how those go.
And guys, I want to turn our focus a little bit now towards the game, and they have just a chock full of players that are out for this one. I'll read you a couple. Adams, Brown, Cooper, Cumbie, Hobbsy, Mator Bebe, Doug Kramer, Reggie Love, Trayvon Sidney. He's been out all season. Tolson, Woods. This is a really big slate of guys that are out. And Jeremy, I want to ask you, what does this game just kind of mean for the new era of the program? Obviously, it's just kind of an interesting situation with their new head coach there in the stands, but how did they just manage this game when they know a new chapter is kind of ahead of them?
Well, I'll take listeners before we came into this. Brett and you and I were talking about, we were surprised Illinois did this today. They announced it before the game, then after the game, kind of give space to the players and all that. And I think PR-wise this is great, because if Illinois struggles today without all those players, they're talking about Bret Bielema the entire game. It's a 3-hour commercial on FS1 about Bret Bielema. Of course, they'll talk about Penn State and James Franklin turning this season around. But I also think it works as, hey, a little extra motivation of, hey, the big guys watching this up in the press box with Josh Whitman. Right? Like, this is an opportunity to show out for him, to try out for him and show him what I have today. So I think it's actually a pretty smart PR move, but also maybe a football move for Josh Whitman to get this out right now. But obviously Illinois is so undermanned right now. And I hope they just go out and have fun playing football, as rudimentary as that seems, because it's been a tough year, guys. For COVID, of getting the season canceled and then brought back, and then the season not going the way you thought, having your starting quarterback out 3 games, winning 2 games and thinking, oh, we're going to turn this around, and then having your coach fired, right? Like, I think all of this has been a slog for this team. And I think coming into this week, they're probably ready for the season to be over, but maybe they get a jolt of energy today with Bielema hired, showing out for him. And I think Brandon Peters will start today, but I think we're going to see Isaiah Williams early and often in this game, maybe get a peek of the future with him. And I hope the coaching staff just plays loose and calls a loose game, because it feels like Rod Smith at times has tried to whittle in, Brandon Peters, do right by him. But man, Isaiah Williams, he seems to be comfortable calling a game with him.
It seems like when we usually in college football, when you see these types of, passing of the baton games, it's when the coach moves on to another team and it's in a bowl game. This isn't a bowl game for Illinois. And we've talked all year about how they can make this a successful season. And it seems like with your head coach fired, that's kind of moved on. And I want to ask Robert, as we're kind of in this weird passing of that baton. It's the closing of the Lovie Smith era and moving into the Bret Bielema era. It might be impossible to call this, a successful season, but what are your thoughts about, the era of Lovie Smith and maybe resetting the program and what this game means at the end of that era and then moving forward and how Bret Bielema can build on that?
Sorry, Andy, I had to lean in. I don't know if you could hear it. The music coming out of there is so loud. They're playing that. I only know it as the Bert and Ernie song. That there was a meme with Bert and Ernie dancing. So they're playing the Bert and Ernie. Oh, now it's something different. Okay, so I could only hear. I mean, it was so loud. I could only hear.
No problem. You want me to go forward again?
Something about Lovie and what this game means, and I think to me this game. I'll say it this way. I write a post on Friday night before every game. I've done it since I started the blog in 2009. I call it Stream of Consciousness. I literally just did it for the Missouri game the first time I had the blog 12 years ago. People liked it. I did it the next game. Now I've done it for 12 years. I didn't do it last night because this game is nothing. There's nothing to evaluate. There's nothing to learn. There's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. There's so many injured players. It's like Jeremy said, it's just to have fun. We don't really learn anything because of so many players being out. It's just, hey, let's go out there. I mean, maybe you evaluate the quarterbacks. Maybe that's what this game's about. But to me, this is just I'll be honest, I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to it because all of you can attest to this. During a game, from Illini fans, our mentions turn into what does it mean? At least mine do. And it's a solid 3 hours of constantly people reaching out to me saying, this means we didn't recruit well. This means we're going to be good next year. This means we're not going to be good this. Today is just football. It's just a game. Probably going to get killed. I hope they have fun. Like Jeremy said, it doesn't mean anything. My mentions will hopefully be free of that. There won't be anger. No, I'm saying this and just watch. But I'm kind of looking forward to just – can we try 6 flea flickers, please? Like, can we just get stupid and have some fun because it's COVID, it's everything else. Let's just do some dumb things and end the season and then get started with a new era.
And you know what? You might as well, right, Robert? Because like you said, it doesn't mean anything. Just go out, let the guys have some fun, call a loose game. Rod Smith, probably not going to be back as the offensive coordinator like we've talked about here in the last 20 minutes. These coaches, most of them are not going to be back. Just go out and play backyard football. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Robert, we're going to let you go here because I know you got to get in the stadium.
Yep.
So give us just a rundown of what you're doing here on this trip. You left early this morning. You're going to basketball tomorrow, then back to Penn State. What kind of coverage are you going to have on your website, and then also what's your trip hold here for you?
Yes, so I actually had the trip planned as just being I was going to go to Rutgers tomorrow and Penn State on Wednesday and then come home. And then last week we had a football game on Saturday at Penn State, so it made it easy to just add this on. So yeah, it's kind of fun, like just hit the road. And get out here and so basically I'm either going to be in the hotel room writing, or I'm going to be at the basketball game or this basketball game or this football game or whatever. So it's going to be a fun time. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Robert, thank you. We will let you go. Appreciate you jumping on here today on the Illini Nation pregame show. We'll read your content at IlliniBoard.com. Thanks so much to Robert. All right, let's bring it back in here, Jeremy, as we get ready for kickoff here. What do you even expect? I mean, can Illinois compete for a half, for 3 quarters? Like, how do you go into this game looking from, let's just call it an Illini fan perspective? If you're talking to an Illini fan here, What should you expect today?
I want to see Isaiah Williams. Like, why not? Like, at this point, what are we playing for? And Brandon Peters, kudos to everything he has done for the program. Like, Illinois has been better for having him the last couple years, and I'm sure he's going to get the start and he's going to play today because Illinois staff wants to do well by him. But, like, let's see what Isaiah Williams has. He was able to beat Rutgers. Penn State is played well here the last couple weeks, but they're not a great team this year. But I think against Brandon Peters, the defense for them with their secondary and their defensive line, they can shut down Illinois. So like Robert was saying, let's throw out the trick plays. Let's get some trickeration and let's just have Rod Smith have some fun, man. Like unload this thing. You're not going to be the offensive coordinator at Illinois next year. I don't know where his next stop's going to be. Probably as a quarterbacks coach somewhere. And the rest of this staff, listen, I think a couple guys have a chance to stay. Jimmy Lindsey, first time calling a defense. Throw out the blitzes, right? Like the opposite of what we've seen with Lovie Smith, where you're just kind of sitting back in zone coverage. Just throw everything at Penn State and see what you got and see if you can have a little fun and make it a competitive game. And but with all these guys out, I mean, it's going to be a very, very, very tough game for Illinois to win.
Yeah, and Penn State's on the rise, winners of 3 straight games. Illinois obviously not, just trying to limp out the season here and get to this quote-unquote new era. Marley and Andy, quickly, guys, what do you think of today? What do you expect, Marley?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jeremy. I would love to see Isaiah Williams get the start if possible. And I think this too, for a lot of the coaches like Rod Smith that likely won't be returning next season. I think this is kind of an opportunity for them to show what they can do as Rod Smith as an interim head coach and Jimmy Lindsey as a defensive coordinator. If they go elsewhere, this game maybe just kind of provides a little bit of film or whatever they would need to get a role somewhere else. So I think it'll just be interesting. I think the coaches just might kind of go off a whim and do what they know. And I think with Isaiah Williams too, he fits a little bit of what Rod Smith has liked to do this season. So I'll be excited to see what happens. But sports, they're all about having fun, right? Doesn't matter if you win or lose, as long as you have fun. And I think that's what we'll see a little bit of today. I mean, they have nothing to lose. Go out, gut it out. Let's see what they can do against Penn State.
Having fun, right, Andy?
Yeah, Mark, you guys are right. I mean, there's not much more that I can say because, it feels like we've come at this game at every angle that we can. I mean, Robert's already said it that, this game, may not mean a whole ton just because of the way that this season has unfolded. It's all going to be about, having fun, and maybe there's not a lot that we can learn. But I will be interested in seeing how the backups on defense are going, because we mentioned there's a lot of defensive starters out, seeing how guys like Marquez Beeson are going to do in this type of game. I know he got a lot of reps last week, but there's still going to be a lot of players on this team that may have a role in the next era of Illinois football, because we've already talked about the seniors. We don't know if they're going to be coming back yet. So it's hard to tell if we need to look at these guys who are replacing some of those seniors and look at this, as their audition tape for next year, because they may be backups again, unfortunately for them, because seniors are coming back. But defense is one of the things I'm going to be looking at, but I agree with everything you guys said. The game is about having fun today, and it should make for one of the most interesting watches, I've ever had in this job.
Bret Bielema is going to be with Josh Whitman in the, I would assume, AD suite today as a guest of Josh Whitman in State College watching. Then they are going to go back to New Jersey tonight. They will fly together, charter in the morning to Champaign. I was told that Bielema will meet the team tomorrow, and then we will hear from Bret Bielema for the first time officially to the Illinois media, at least on Monday at 1 o'clock. Jeremy, as we wrap up here, what do you need to see from Bret to win the press conference? Or has he already done that with his appearance on College Game Day and Big Ten Network this morning? It's certainly a lot different feel than with Lovie Smith.
Yeah, listen, this is a polarizing hire because he's got warts, right? Like he's had success, so people are going to buy into that. He can do that again here at Illinois. But then he didn't have success at Arkansas. And he's brash, and he's rubbed some people the wrong way, both coaches and media and all of that. But I think he's a breath of fresh air for us. I think he'll win the press conference. I think he's already said the right things, whether it's recruiting-wise in state. You do that. Like there's a check mark of things you do as the Illinois head coach. You talk about the history and Red Grange and Dick Butkus, right? You mentioned those things. You talk about in-state recruiting. And for him, I think the important part is one of my biggest questions will be, like, what have you earned the last 3 years? Or what did you learn the last 5 years where you've struggled at Arkansas and now you've been in the NFL? What did you learn from that you can take into here and be successful? But I think he'll win the press conference. You go back to the Arkansas introductory press conference. I don't think he's got a woo pig suey thing he can say in this one, but I think he's really good at that. I think he's going to engage a lot of people. And I think he's going to have a little time to be in a honeymoon period. I don't think people are expecting him to win big next year. But I do think the transfer market offers him, a way to show, and unlike Lovie Smith, I think he should go to the transfer market. I think that gives him a chance to show that, hey, I can put an imprint on this program right away. Plus, I do think he's taking over a roster. If some of these seniors do come back, that can compete and can win some Big Ten West games.
All right, real quick, Jeremy, last thing. Illinois basketball's got a big game tomorrow as well. I think, at least for me, I've kind of lost track of that today. Like, Illinois is playing tomorrow, and it's a big-time game against Rutgers. What do you expect out of that? What's your first thoughts on that going in?
It's a game we should be talking more about. I know we won't because of everything going on with football right now, but it's a top 20 matchup. At Rutgers last year, you didn't have Ayo Dosunmu, but you lost by 17. Rutgers is legit. And if there's a model for Illinois football, it might be Rutgers basketball and Steve Peichel and what he's done. Just a tough team, plays great defense, and they don't make a lot of mistakes. I think Illinois got a little bit more talent, but just a little bit. I mean, Ron Harper Jr. is a great player. Miles Johnson's a great player. They got a freshman on the wing who's really, really good. Jacob Young has been fantastic this year. So this is where you prove yourself as a Big Ten title contender early. Right? If you go steal a win on the road, and would be stealing from a team like Rutgers, all of a sudden you're 2-0 and you start stacking wins. And that's what's important for a Big Ten title contender is consistency night in and night out. You can't afford 6 losses or 7 losses if you're going to win a Big Ten title, most likely. So if you go steal one on the road, you feel pretty dang good against one of the best schedules in the country to come out of that 6-2. I think you'd feel pretty dang good.
RAC, never an easy place to play either. Illinois and Rutgers tomorrow at noon. Jeremy, thank you so much. It's been a fun year. I know it hasn't been the results that a lot of people hoped, even we expected, and Lovie Smith now gone as a result of that. But it's been fun to bring all this digital content all year long. We'll look forward to it again next year, hopefully from Ireland for the first game. That'd be a lot of fun, huh?
I hope so, man. Go vaccine. I hope we can. Because Bret and I were doing stuff in Maui. It'd be great to be out in Dublin doing all this as well. And then we could do our feature on James McCourt coming back for a 60th year just for that. So appreciate you guys having me, and you guys are the best at what you do. So thank you.
Jeremy, thank you. We'll look for all of your content on IlliniInquirer.com. And guys, that's going to do it for the Illini Nation pregame show. It was fun all season long. We'll see what the Illini can do today. Big-time underdogs at Penn State, but the Illini get their new coach in Bret Bielema. All right, guys, thanks. It's been fun.
Thanks, Bret.